Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Mikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
In here.
Quite.
It reminds me of my mum and dad's house. It's always cold.
Yeah, my parents' house is fucking always freezing as well.
I literally always go in and I'm like, death walks like within these walls because it's so fucking cold. I'm like,
I think it's
They need to get an electric blanket.
so mum bought, so growing up, like Italian house, always cold, never wanting to like turn on the heater.
yes.
So we always suffered. Whereas Puds, the cat, she has her own fucking electric blanket. Mum bought her an electric blanket. We never got one.
Spoiled kitty. Is it like just a little kitten, like cat
it's
size?
a genuine like electric blanket.
What the fuck?
I know.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Cairns, so being cold was never really a problem.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think I owned a hoodie, like, my entire life until I moved down to the Gold Coast. Like, you grew up in Cairns, like, you might have, like, a cardigan sort of thing, but over winter up there, it was never really cold. And I hate the cold. Like, I went to Tassie a couple of years ago and
It's still defrosting.
and legit the whole time I was just like,
Yeah.
like I hate being cold because I just hate that constant
Just gets down to your bones. And
like
it's
that
just-
tightness. And I don't know, like, I mean, you might be a little bit more familiar with this now, but like my boobs get cold.
Yeah.
And when the implants are cold, like I shiver. Like I stay so much colder. Like I'll take my top off and like my boobs.
Can you feel it?
Yeah, my
It's like
boobs
having
are
ice
cold.
bricks on your
Yeah.
chest.
Really?
Yeah. And so like my whole body, I'm just like constantly like even more cold and uncomfortable. So I don't ever feel warm. I don't know if I'd actually be interested if anyone out there has got implants and wants to give us an insight as to like how this all works. Please do. How can I get myself warmer at the core?
So interested.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable. I don't like it very much. But I did actually have a couple of extra things I wanted to drop in here today because recently, so there's a little segment that the boys do called Zach's Facts, and recently I've had 2 client calls, and both of these clients have sent me in our our little pre-screen thing some interesting facts.
What?
So I was like, I'm just going to start here and see how everyone goes. So this one is from Caden.
Oh, God. Stop it right there.
So Caden's fact is a popular ingredient in sushi and sandwiches is sending an Australian marine creature towards extinction. The dire situation, and I can't pronounce this, can you read that? Can you tell me what does that say?
Morgan
Skate?
I don't know.
It's Maugean.
Yeah,
For
Morgan.
those listening.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't actually have asked you because you can't pronounce Saturday properly.
Saturday.
She misses the U and the R. The dire situation the Morgan skate faces is due to is due in part to our love of Tasmanian salmon, which is farmed in the fish's last remaining territory. The creature resembles a small spotted stingray, and its ancestors can be traced back 66 million years. Today, it is only found in the Macquarie Harbour on Tasmania's rugged coast. In less than a decade, it could be completely wiped out. Conservationists are warning the state faces an embarrassing repeat of history, as it was home to the 20th century's most infamous extinction and the state-sponsored eradication of the Tasmanian tiger.
Fuck's sake. He's definitely just copied and pasted that,
Yeah, I was like,
hasn't
did
he?
you get that from ChatGPT?
It's a big Harvard reference.
So thank you very
Oh
much
my
for
God.
that fact. I saw the call inquiry come through, the booking come in, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've encouraged Caden to have a chat and just check in and see how things are going and, whatever. And I'm reading this. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what am I reading?
That's
Like,
really impressive for someone who turned up to the gym the other day and he didn't have his glasses on and he looked straight at me and then looked down. I went, "Oh, good morning." He's like, "Oh, fuck."
I had no
I
idea
can't
who
make
you
out
are.
faces. So from now I'm just going to go, "Oi." Say and you'll know.
Interesting fact as well. Caden also was a radio presenter.
Oh,
So-
he's got a good face for it.
Oh,
I'm totally kidding.
oh, Caden. Poor Caden. No, he actually sent me some audio recordings. I'll see if I can pull it up and play it on
He
here.
is charismatic.
Yes, but
Very.
it was because in some of he was laughing at my Instagram stories where when you start the new story, like let's just say you've recorded
Ah.
like, 3 30-second ones.
Yeah.
What the first word is in each one of those recordings. And I think there was like 5 and it was so and so in like 4 back-to-back Instagram stories it was and then I went into it and I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna stop this.
Now we know he was literally just skipping
Yeah.
through them because he would have had
Exactly.
so.
So thank you very much for that, Caden. And then well, this one's different. Actually, let me pull it up. Jeez, she's overwhelmed me with some.
Who is this person?
Lauren.
Oh, God, I was going to say, I hope it's a follow-up.
Loz followed up. Based on landmass, the Vatican City is the smallest country in the world, measuring just 0.2 square miles, almost 120 times smaller than the island of the Manhattan. Situated on the western bank of the Tiber River, Vatican City is 2-mile border, is landlocked by Italy. Have either of you, have you been to Vatican City? Have either of you been there? It's really cool. It is a really nice place. I've been there before. But yes, there you go. It's like literally a country within a city. It's like a city within a city. So they just have these gigantic big walls that go around the Vatican City within, I don't know, I think it's Rome.
Is it like Shrek?
Shrek?
You know they have that little village? Lord
He's
Farquaad?
Oh.
No, Lord Farquaad. He has his little village.
But within a
that.
city?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember
I
that.
can't remember.
I don't remember
Right,
Lord
we're skipping
Farquaad
hip hop
having...
and watching Shrek.
Let me educate y'all on Shrek.
And then finally, Loz has sent another one through. Would you rather have your name tattooed on your forehead or have no front teeth? How many front teeth are we talking? 2 front teeth?
I'd say 2. I feel like whenever you say
Like
front
buck
teeth,
teeth.
you talk
Yeah.
about the 2.
Just 2.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have front teeth, can't you just get fake one, like fake?
No,
You
you can't like over.
Fuck. All right, face tat.
Really?
Face tat and
Face
cover it
tat.
up with makeup.
Yeah, face tat.
But you can't. No, you can't cover it. You can't like get fake teeth in and then cover your tattoo.
face
You
tat.
have to embrace the
Face tat.
name. What is it? Your name on your forehead.
Yeah.
Again, this is all
It would
context.
save people from spelling it incorrectly every single time. So I'm actually going to get the face tat.
Jordan.
Jordon. Who the fuck
Jordan.
spells it like that?
Jordan.
Oh, what would you do?
It depends on the size of the tattoo, right? Like, are we talking full forehead, or are we talking like
What
above
happens if you've got a
the
really large
eyebrow?
forehead? That's a big commitment.
Or
Kirby's
like-
like, I don't want mine in size
Yeah.
15 times New
Yeah.
Roman.
So it's context dependent. How big are we talking? I'd probably rather have no teeth because
Okay.
I'd rather have no teeth than be the person that has their name tattooed on their
I
forehead.
think though you could like make a funny story for the face,
Yeah.
the tat on your forehead. It's
Yeah,
like Vegas.
yeah.
Just like
I don't
shake your
know.
head and say Vegas, and people would be like, okay.
Mm,
I just get
Yeah.
angry at myself for not being able to pronounce words properly.
He'd be like,
Literally.
all right.
Saturday.
Saturday. Legit. Every time. It's like, I didn't realize I said it like that.
I didn't know.
Oh, for fuck. Okay. So a couple of extra things we've got going on. We have Deadlift for Dogs obviously coming up very soon as well. So super excited to see some of the names that have dropped through. Jordan is doing it.
I am.
Yes.
Yep.
And then we have Alex doing it as
Yep.
well. And apparently Josh is going to sign
Yeah,
up and
all
do
of
it
us.
too.
Yeah.
My fuck's sake. So the coaches
Who's going to be doing the behind the scenes?
I really want to. I just need to look at flights.
Yeah.
And go to
Surprise!
I know. You know, what am I going to sign up as? Like some alias?
Well, I've got Tia, one of my former nutrition clients down in Tassie. She said she's actually going to be up here for it already.
Ooh.
So I'm trying to con her into
Yeah.
doing Deadlift for Dogs because I think that'll be a really, really fun day.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there is interested, Deadlift for Dogs, 19th of August. A few people have asked if Will's going to do it yet. So we're a little undecided because I think he could just go in and just do like a YOLO lift.
You could just warm up.
Yeah.
Literally.
But the intentions at the moment is for him to do GPC Nationals, which is the weekend after. So the last thing I'd want is for him to do this entire prep
Yeah.
and then make a, silly thing. He's like, I'll do it sumo. And I was like, no, you fucking won't.
He could
It's
just
sumo.
You could just do his like usual like taper deadlift, and
Yeah.
it's still going to be impressive.
Yeah, we'll see. There's some big boys doing it. Ollie Purton reckons he's going to open on 300. So let's fucking see it, mate.
That's like it.
Put your money where your mouth
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
All right. So today's episode, we have we're all rugged up here except for Kirby.
So I'm here. I'm sweating under the kids.
What happens when you come up from Tasmania? Cool. So today's episode we have Comp Day Nutrition, and we're going to start this off by going. I think the easiest way is just to talk about our own experiences on comp. We've all competed. I don't compete anymore. I mean, I don't want to say I don't compete anymore because I'll probably compete again, but I'm not competitive. I just do it for a bit of shits and gigs. And right now, obviously, my direction is pointed more towards track stuff. But I think it would just be wise for us to kind of go through and talk about what we eat on comp day, some of the suggestions that we give our athletes, and just give the listeners a bit of an insight as to what we do and what we encourage our people to do rather than trying to like overwhelm this.
Yeah.
But first thing, we obviously have brekkie. So is there anything, I think, before we get into like what we eat and that sort of stuff, is there anything in particular on comp day or morning of that we should really kind of emphasize to start off? I don't think so. We'll just see where this conversation goes.
Yeah, I reckon we'll see where it
Yeah.
goes, and we'll probably touch on stuff. And if we've forgotten anything,
Just
we can
random
just
brain dumps.
circle
Yeah.
on back.
I've got my notes here, but I'm not very good at following them. Fuck this. I spent too much time with Jordan. All of a sudden, I'm just like,
He says like weird stuff.
take my strong hand. You're a bad influence. Next
Oh
minute,
my
Mickey's got her
God.
nipple pierced
I
too.
do that to my sister, and she
Yeah.
dry reaches. She hates that. I'm like, watch out. Take my strong, and she's like, get fucking fucked. Loses her mind.
What?
Yeah, I
Feisty.
can't deal.
Feisty. All right, so comp day. Breakfast. Jordan, I'll let you kick us off.
Okay.
Brekkie, what do you do? Why?
So usually I'll have a 2-hour weigh in. So what I would do, usually I'm pretty good with like where I am in my weight class. So I'll just have my usual breakfast of oats, a little bit of fruit, yogurt, and peanut butter, but I'll play around with the volume because
Yeah.
I don't want to have 200 grams of fruit, 200 grams of yogurt, before comp day.
Yeah.
Before competing.
Why not?
Because that's a lot. I weighed my breakfast the other day. It weighed 900 grams.
Foofed.
Yeah, I was like,
Girl.
that's a lot of food to have sitting in your gut
Yeah.
if you are bracing for a
Particularly
squat.
like high fiber.
Super
Yeah.
high in fiber. So I'll have like oats or wheat bix, and then you've got usually have blueberries, which are really high in fiber, and then a lot of yogurt, which dairy, protein in there. So we don't actually need. Well, I don't like having that much food in me, and I wouldn't suggest other people have that breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would usually play around with the volume. I would probably fuck a lot of the fruit off. I'll probably up my peanut butter a little bit because that's the only time of the day where I'm probably going to have fats, to be
Yeah.
honest. And it's super low volume.
Yeah.
I'll play around with like having less yogurt, less oats, and then after weigh-in, I'll have a little bit of water with a bit of salt in there as well, or just sip on Hydrolyte slowly throughout the morning. And then once I weigh in, then I'll start munching on like my super high, like carb kind of like crumpets or English muffins with jam before warming up for my squats.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the morning looks for me personally.
And you consume that because it's a 2-hour weigh-in after your weigh-in?
Oh, no. So usually I'll eat that before.
Yeah.
Because usually I'm okay. I've got like 2 kilos to play with. This year might be a different story. I might have to eat it, might have to change my breakfast completely and eat after weigh-in. But usually I'll wake up around 6. I'll eat that quite early because I'm up.
Sleeping for you?
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll probably be up at 4 taking my nervous poops and then I'll have my breakfast.
Yeah. But obviously this all depends on whether or not you want to play the dots game or anything like that. And these are all things like in the last episode we suggested like don't eat until after you've weighed in. Yeah. But it really depends on your unique circumstances.
Now I'll be playing the dots game.
Yeah. Check you out.
Yeah, fucking getting up there. Nah. I'm not. Totally not. But now I'll probably change that strategy. But that's something that I've done in the past.
Yeah. And so for the listeners as well, please tell everyone how little you are.
I'm 4'10". So
I meant your weight class.
So I compete in the under 52. So the last few times I've competed, I've been 49, 50 kilos. This year I'm hoping to be closer. Well, I am closer to that 52 mark. So
juicy.
Yeah. Yeah.
She got jacked.
Jacked and juicy. Watch out. So we'll see how my breakfast sitch will change this year, given that I probably have less room to move.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah. All good.
It's all part of learning.
Yeah. And Kirbinator, what is your go-to brekkies?
So our weigh-ins are typically 24 hours. Have that little luxury. So
cool kids.
Yeah. So breakfast is very similar to George. So I'll either have my oats, plus I'll throw in probably an English muffin. There, obviously, because I don't have to weigh in, I can just go ham.
Yeah,
as soon as I wake up.
Of course.
So that would be like an English muffin or a crumpet. A sucker for a crumpet. A sourdough crumpet actually is the bee's knees. So that would be something like oats, very basic, not much fruit as well. And just crumpet with some jam or something.
Yeah.
Tell her if I'm feeling spicy.
Oh
yeah.
The
Just
big
just a
guns.
little smidge though.
Yeah.
Little smidge.
So
it's very plain Jane.
And is there anything like have either of you had any issues with having like what would seemingly be like a little bit more of a fibrous meal in the morning? Like have either of you had any loss of appetite over the day or anything like that throughout those? I mean, 24-hour versus 2 hours very different.
Yeah.
But would you have had any difference in appetite and stuff like that as a result of those breakfasts?
I think I make up for it because I'll have like Gatorade and liquid carbs, whereas usually I wouldn't drink my calories like day to day. So I try be strategic in that way by having multiple like bottles of it on hand. Yeah.
And Kirbi, you've obviously got a 24-hour window, so it's usually a little bit more forgiving in terms of do you find though that you still struggle like with the nerves pre-comp?
Always.
Yeah.
Regardless, I think it's part of a normal thing to be honest, but I don't know. It's just what I'm used to as well, I think, and it just sits fine. I know how it sits, which is a big thing as well. So.
Well, that's the most important thing that we always emphasize to people, right? Is just like whatever you normally eat, keep it the same. Keep it as consistent as you possibly can. Yeah. So personally, what I consume, what will consume, what I encourage 99% of my clients to consume is a bacon and egg roll with juice. And the logic behind that, I don't get super emotional with the food choices that I'm making. I am just purely looking like what is this going to provide me and my clients, and how can we practice implementing a consumption type like this in the weeks beforehand so that there isn't holy shit, I haven't had this before and it's new and different. So the bacon and eggs, I obviously understand a lot of people can't usually consume it like, you know, Monday to Friday if they have working schedules or anything like that. So usually in the 4 to 6 weeks before it, I'm encouraging my clients to eat that every Saturday or Sunday morning. And there's nothing better than like waking up on the Sunday morning and just having like a bacon and egg muffin. Yeah, like it's just a really nice vibe. So bacon and egg rolls are my go-to. And the reason why I generally recommend that is because the bacon and the eggs, it may be the only time that we get in like some form of sort of protein over the day as well. So we're kind of stocked there. Bacon obviously is quite high in sodium, so it's a really good source to stock up on there. We've got a good amount of fats from both the bacon and the eggs, and then we have a really good breakdown of carbs from the muffin, wrap, whatever sauce that you're looking to wrap that up in, and the brekkie juice as well. So like whatever they prefer, orange juice, apple juice, or like one of those golden circle tropical ones.
Oh, they're
is
so
my
cute.
go-to.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's usually my recommendation for brekkie. And even if people can have it in the 1 to 2 days before their comp as well. Like personally, I find like you can never really get sick of bacon and eggs.
No.
So, but obviously, if you guys are used to having your oats and your fruits and stuff like that, then there's nothing wrong with it because that's what you're used to. Other things that I have recommended clients to go for, if they don't have much of an appetite, is kind of the problem that most people have, is that they just don't have an appetite first thing in the morning. They're so nervous, they're so anxious. But it's super easy to get in like a bowl of cereal, right? So like depending on how their guts go with like milk and stuff like that, you can obviously pick like, different types of milk that maybe not upset your tummy as much, but like having a bowl of cereal is a really easy way to get in a good smack of carbs and stuff like that as well.
Nutri-Grain.
So fun.
Yeah.
Whatever
Love
you
it.
go to is and then like with that some peanut butter on toast. So those are other options that people can go for. I've seen people rock up with like Macca's pancakes and stuff like that. I'm like, when was the last time you had Macca's pancakes,
and why
man?
today of all days would you opt for that?
Yeah. So like I get it in the sense that like some people, pancakes is again another really good option. But I would prefer it be something that is easily accessible and you make it yourself in the days and the weeks leading up to it. So that's why those are my go-tos. But before we get into like the rest of the day, a few other things that people need to be considerate of when it comes to the first meal that they have is the timing of that meal in relation to their first lifts and that sort of stuff. Obviously, if it's a 2-hour weigh-in, then you don't have as much wiggle room. I mean, even with 2-hour weigh-ins, it depends on where you are in your flights. Because you're in the lighter flights, you're generally going to be first.
I'm up first. I'm in there as soon as they start weigh-ins. I'm like, get me in.
So because you have the luxury of being lighter in your, well, you had the luxury of being lighter in your weight class, you could have your brekkie a lot sooner. Like, what would you suggest to people that don't have that luxury?
I'd probably say that's where you want to be really careful with any kind of fiber, like 2 hours, because you're going to be warming up. And I don't want to be warming up with food in my tummy. Because that's going to make me be like, oh my God, like I can feel it in there. Like you're going to start freaking out. So I'd probably say go for something just like bread, toast, jam, maybe a tiny bit of peanut butter in there. Like that's not, don't overdo the fats. I would not probably go for yogurt in that instance. Like I've seen people have like oats and stuff like that after they've weighed in and they're okay. But personally for me, I would not like fuck around with that. I'd be too scared.
So I always try and suggest a safe window of 2 to 3 hours before you even start warming up is when you want to have that meal. So if it's a larger meal like the bacon and eggs that we've suggested, then that I've suggested, then like maybe closer to 2.5, 3 hours beforehand. And also depends on the size of the person. Like someone like us, I'm not quite as little as you two.
You can be in a little gang.
But like
stretched out a lot more.
But for someone that, for women, let's say that maybe don't have as large of a stomach, or a large of an appetite as some men, like having it closer to maybe 3 hours before they start lifting. So that for the 24-hour weigh-in people, if their lifting starts at, I don't know, 10 a.m. or something like that, then 7 a.m. make sure that you're having your brekkie And that gives you plenty of time that even when you start warming up, it's been 2 hours between like your warm-ups and that meal sort of thing. So around that is the timeline that we generally suggest. Now a couple of other things that we want to talk about here is hydration as well. So coffee, pre-workouts, caffeine, that sort of thing. Like, what are your sort of go-tos recommendations for people?
Yeah. Well, I would always say before you even like eat or have caffeine, make sure you're drinking some sort of water, because often we could just forget and go straight for like, it's comp day, like get my pre in, and it's like, you haven't drank any water today. So I would obviously make sure I'm sipping on that slowly, maybe adding a bit of salt to it if I don't have salt in my brekkie. And then for caffeine, I would say timing that for like, depending what kind of caffeine you're having, 45 minutes to 60 minutes before you lift, but then also making sure you know what kind of person you are and what your tolerance is, because my first comp, I had a really bad experience with caffeine.
Okay.
Like
Elaborate.
So pre-squats, I think it was like 200 or 300, maybe 200 or 300 milligrams.
Poofed.
Yeah. Yeah.
She bouncing off the
like,
walls.
and I remember, because I was so nervous. It was an unfamiliar gym. I've never been to Iron Underground before. We travelled from Gold Coast to Brisbane. I was really nervous, and I didn't think that my anxiety was going to be so high. Factor in like mega dose of like, not mega dose, but like a big dose.
200 to 300
in relation
grams.
to your body size.
Yeah. And I couldn't feel my legs.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't feel my legs.
So when we look at like a caffeine, a performance-based dosing for caffeine, we're talking like between 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram body weight.
Yeah.
So you've had what we would like double that dosing, essentially.
I think I had 6 milligrams per kilo body weight before squats.
Yes.
And now looking back, I always tell people either go right below, go 2 to 3 milligrams. If you're nervous, maybe don't have any at all and just rely on adrenaline alone for the start of the day. But I remember my third attempt, I could have pushed, but I was like, no, let's go conservative, because I was literally just like shaking.
Yeah. And if anything from like this novice comp that's happened has taught me is that there's so many different mental, psychological like breakdowns that people sort of experience over the comp. Like some people that would normally be quite extroverted become incredibly introverted and really sort of like shut down and don't understand, like just let their nerves get the better of them. And we're not going to get into the whole like mindset sort of stuff behind it, but you know, I saw other people out here that were just complete scatterbrains, like just where they would normally be like loading up things, and they just had no idea their normal attempt jumps. They had no idea what they were opening on. They were just like, just completely all over the place. And it's like, we've practiced this for weeks and months for some people. Like, you've mentally and physically prepared yourself for this one singular day, and it just goes out the window. So that's why I suppose that first meal is really important to kind of set yourself up, and why if it's something that you're already really, really familiar with, then you're just like, okay, like this is just like any
autopilot.
other day. Yeah. It's just one less thing to think about.
Exactly.
So caffeine, like what would some of the things that you go through on comp day for caffeine?
Not when I first started, that's for sure.
Yeah.
My initial experience with caffeine was awful because I had no idea, and I knew what I knew at the time. But it's like I woke up and was like brushing my teeth with Monster Can. I was like, not literally, but that's what it felt like. Like as soon as I was up, it was like, gotta get it into me. So driving there, and my first comp was well, it was nearby, but I remember the second one, and I still probably really didn't think a lot too much of it. Was an hour and a half drive, and on that way I think me and a couple of the girls that I was traveling with, was like, one had a Red Bull, I had a Monster, I was like, fuck had the music high, and it was just awful. So similar to you, I would now base it on how I'm feeling. Obviously the more comps you do, you're still very nervous, but tapering that to how you're feeling, essentially. So
competing is a skill.
Yeah.
And I think if that's one thing that people can get out of this, it's that like, I'm not saying compete 10 times a year or 5 times a year or something like that, but you get better each time you do it. So don't make the verdict of I'll never do this again based on that comp, that one bad experience because you made a couple of silly errors. And that's why investing in a coach who helps guide you through some of these things is definitely worthwhile. But yeah, so caffeine, I personally, I'll just have a coffee.
Yeah.
And I usually
That
just
sounds sensible.
suggest people just have a
Yeah.
coffee. It's what I have most days of the week. I might change up the like the milk volume, so I might just have a smaller coffee with like the same amount of shots in that coffee.
Yeah.
So it's just less milkiness and that sort of stuff sitting in my tummy. And then depending on the individual and where they are in their flights, like if I was looking at, say, Will, for example, and his comp, he had just an espresso before he weighed in, and that, like, he was comfortable with that. And then as he started warming up for his squats, it's more of a placebo thing for him, was that he liked the taste of having his Monster Zero because that's what he's usually always has. And it wasn't so much the caffeine that he was looking for out of that. It was more just like, I know that when I drink this, I physically and mentally start to prepare for X lift.
Yeah.
So
It's the process.
exactly. Yeah. And fortunately for him, he was in the third flight of the day, being, or maybe the fourth. I don't know. There was a lot of flights.
It was
that day.
third.
Yeah, the third flight.
Yeah.
So he had, you know, plenty of time for all of it to kind of get into rhythms and see some of the first squats and stuff like that go down. So some of the nerves started to settle and those sorts of things. So, and he didn't finish the entire can of the Monster Zero. It was just like the taste of that, kind of signaling like, boom, okay, go time.
Yeah.
And then he just sipped on that as the day went on.
But association with the environment too, if that's what you have at that, you know, in that environment, then that just
Exactly.
feels familiar.
So as we said, autopilot.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? We've mentioned here, if anxious, be careful with dosing. So pre-squats, do you guys have much in terms of food fluid consumption, like as you're warming up for squats or anything like that?
So before warming up, so maybe like an hour, because usually an hour before I squat, I would have like a crumpet with jam or English muffin with jam.
So that's your Monster Zero.
Yeah, yeah. So like, because I've usually make my breakfast smaller, like I'm still like, I need something.
Yeah.
So that's what I would usually have. I think you're similar, right?
Yeah. Taper the volume,
Yeah.
depending, like for my main meal, and always have that little
Little
snacky
snack.
snack.
Yeah. So that's, and it's the same thing for me as well, pre-squats. Or what I recommend clients is corn thins is another one if they find, like, if they've had the bacon and eggs and maybe it's too much bread or too bready. Like a lot of girls prefer just to have corn thins with some honey or jam or whatever spread they feel like, and then maybe like a banana if they're going for the corn thins. For some of the boys who are quite comfortable, like Will eats, like, he'll easily eat half a loaf of bread or a loaf of bread a day, no problems. So like for him, he'll have just jam sammies, and he's quite happy just to graze on those as the day goes on and stuff. So pre-squats, it's pretty simple. We have got here to note like the nervous peas and poos. I don't feel like the poos are as much of a thing on comp.
I think it's nervous wheeze.
Yeah, it's the wheeze, which is obviously really annoying if you've got your soft suit on. You're just people like constantly like undressing.
Or if you've got knee sleeves on as well. Like, I don't know. It's just annoying.
So you just see people darting back and forth and back and forth, going to the toilet.
I think we were saying like if you're just knocking back fluids really quickly, like you're not going to be able to absorb that. So it's more so like making sure you're drinking slowly.
Yes.
So you're staying hydrated, but you're not just like
slamming it down.
Yeah, because that's when you're just going to be pissing out like straight away.
You could probably start, like, if you're up at 6 a.m. having your first meal, you could probably have like, 300 to 500 mils of water in that, and then it's like just sip as needed to keep your mouth moist rather than, because the other thing that that we haven't touched on here is that at comps you're like a little social butterfly, right? Because for some people, like in Will's situation where he knows a lot of the people that he's competing with, or a lot of people know him and want to chat and whatever, like you're talking the whole time and you're
breathing in chalk.
I wasn't going but it's just I guess engage with a lot more people and that can weigh you down and that can impact the fluid, the consistency and consumption and that sort of a thing as well. So it's definitely something to be mindful of. Now, post squats is obvious. It depends on the timing of the day as to what we kind of recommend. Like if it's a fast comp,
Yeah.
like I've got a client that's competing this weekend and there's 12 people
Oh,
in his
fuck.
comp.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's is that one flight?
one flight, not even one full flight.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, well, how is the meet director breaking this up? Are they breaking up
Yeah.
into 2 flights of 6 and then giving people breaks in between?
5-10 minute rest.
Yeah, in between attempts. Like for me, that's probably how I'd rather do it than just one flight and just like
Have it
force
done.
everyone through
Yeah.
it. Because the other thing is like when you finish squatting, you just start warming up for bench, and then there's this awkward gap between, like for the spectators and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, anyways, those are things that we need to consider is the pace of the comp. Like if it's, you know, an AM PM split, then generally that comp is going to be done, you know, if they're starting at, like I know some of the APL comps, they start at lifting at 8, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
and they're done by 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
So you don't have time to have a large meal.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where, as coaches, it's important for us to know, like, what's the
Structure.
structure.
the structure of the
Yeah,
comp.
yeah.
Like, whereas Pro Raw, what time was Will's last deadlift? Like, it was done
Like
by
6 or 5.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it was a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
So a really, really long day where he had the ability to eat meals. He had
Yeah.
2 meals. He had
They were
one
pretty big
after,
meals as well.
yeah, it was mince
Yeah.
and rice, just his normal go-to
Yeah.
options. But he had one after squats and one after benching because there was so much time between him having to deadlift again. And obviously being type 1, there's things like blood sugar and stuff like that that we had to be considerate of.
Yep.
But yeah, so what would be some of your options
Yep.
for that post-squat meal, and why do we go for that particular meal type?
So for me, sometimes I would say like a wrap with a bit of ham and salad because you've got more so carbs in there. You've got a little bit of salt in the ham and then salad leaves just for garnish. No.
Yeah, garnish.
I don't know.
Okay.
Garnish. I don't know for sure. But
That's also not a very high fibrous.
no, it's just white bread,
Yeah.
tiny bit of ham, but you've got carbs coming in and
Yeah.
that. Otherwise, if it's a really quick comp, something I have is like PB&J.
Yeah.
I just might just bring 2
Can't go
sandwiches.
wrong with a sandwich,
I love
honestly.
PB&J,
I
and
know,
like
it's so
you've got
good.
carbs, and then a little bit of fat in peanut butter. Again, I
Yeah.
wouldn't put a shit ton of peanut butter on it because that's slower to digest. It slows everything down, but it's tasty, easy to go down, and familiar. So those would be the 2. If it's a longer comp, I would say something like rice, similar, mince, a bit of like salt seasoning, maybe a tiny bit of veggies, if any.
Yeah.
And I would say to the person, like, if you know you want to have that and it's a short time frame, don't eat the whole thing. Like, just make an adult
Graze on it.
choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
graze.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
For me personally, it's just a very basic meal like rice or mince and things like that. But I actually had a client that had a sushi roll, which was I don't know. She tried it and it worked.
Ask Josh.
It's
I
not
know.
my go-to.
Yeah, it was.
Was
like
it fish sushi
no,
or
it was crispy
chicken
chicken,
sushi?
and a bit of salt and carbs and
There's a lot of carbs
rice.
in this. Yeah,
I
the
guess-
rice is shoved in.
Yeah,
I guess the risk,
Um,
like, I don't know about you guys, but after I have sushi, I feel like quite full and so I don't know if that would be my choice.
Yeah.
The other thing is obviously it's like, is this sushi that she's made herself or is it
Sure,
store bought
so.
sort of stuff? But like whenever I finish sushi, I'm always kind of
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like I just think of that and I'm like, I don't know if that's what I personally would go
Yeah.
for. But I mean, each to their own. If that's something that she's tried and maybe it's
Yeah.
sushi that she's made at home, then you know, I don't see any difference in
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
had that.
yeah.
It wouldn't be my choice. I mean, it's a great choice and it worked for her.
Yeah.
But I'm just a basic.
Yeah. Nah, basic is
Yeah.
like a sandwich, like you said, depending on the length of the day, or a rice.
Well, I remember one of your clients, Reed, at Pro Raw. He had this like feast.
That was
man.
the separate carry-on luggage on its own. That
We
was
can't
huge.
access your video.
It was chicken.
Chicken egg.
From the eggs from his chicken farm?
I hope so. Chicken fried rice.
Wait, was that?
Yeah.
It basically was chicken fried rice. It had mixed veggies, egg. Yeah, it was just a bulk fried rice.
It was literally a
It's
container like this
huge.
big.
Yeah.
and it's what he ate for the entire day. I walked out the back and I saw him out there and I was like, oh, hey man, how you feeling? And he's just like got this thing
with his ladle.
Oh my
chowing down on
I
it.
feel like a chubby bunny after eating all of that
He
food.
didn't eat it all.
He was very good at rationing it out,
Oh.
but it was meal prep in bulk.
Yes, in a
Oh.
bulk. Like,
Yeah.
And did he
container.
travel to Pro Raw with that?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, how did he? Did he just make it the day before in a
Yeah.
bathtub,
Yeah.
like brew it?
Yeah.
I'm sure he was staying at Airbnb accommodation with a kitchen.
Yeah.
As we would
He has
recommend.
facilities.
As we would recommend. Not in a bathtub.
In a
So,
communal hostel.
this is the
That is a
second-
recipe for
Oh, I've
gastro.
been sitting down for too long. This is what happens.
But yeah, so post squats, much the same. I usually go like a mince and rice. The mince is already broken down, so it's just that little bit easier on your digestive system than going for steak or a chicken breast or something like that. Like you can get minced chicken or other minced options, and that's going to just make life a little bit easier if it's already pre-broken down. And then whether it's couscous is another thing that's already quite fine. I generally stay clear of pasta. I don't know why. I just never find that it really settles quite nicely for people. And a rice is just a much easier carb base for most. But that's what I would generally recommend people bring if it is a big day.
Yeah.
And just reiterate to them, you don't have to eat it all. Chuck some taco seasoning in there, and it just really adds some flavor and some salt and that sort of stuff to it. So I'll recommend all my clients to bring something like that if I think it's going to be a big day. But I also suggest that they bring a wrap of some description, because if it isn't a big day and things are moving a little bit faster pace and they don't have the desire to eat a mince and rice meal, then they have something like a wrap available to them. Worst cases, they eat the mince and rice and the wrap is something that they can save for later in the day, or a family member or something like that who's come to spectate can eat it as well. So it's kind of a no-brainer in that regard. And the reason why we consume our heartiest or largest meal post squats is because if we have that fullness coming into bench, you can kind of get away with it. But like there's nothing worse than having that full tummy because you've eaten your meal post bench and you're trying to then warm up for deadlifts, put the belt back on, trying to brace. Like the bracing structure between a bench and a squat and a deadlift is very, very different. So some people do still wear belts when they bench, but if you've got that little bit of fullness because maybe you did over consume and try and force food in,
You can get away with it a little.
you can get away with it. But you can't get away with that feeling pre-deadlifts.
No.
So that's why, for the listeners out there, that's why we recommend try and have something a little bit hardier post squats. It usually also falls around lunchtime for most people, depending on, if it's a short comp or however it's kind of been broken down. And it's just going to tie you over than relying solely on chippies, snacks, that sort of stuff. So to have some normal kind of structured meal in there is going to tie you over and give you, like we've mentioned, the slow release carbs or whatever. It's going to give you that energy fuel for a longer period of time than the fatigue and the flatness that people kind of have because all they've had is liquid calories, sugar, lollies, chips, that sort of stuff.
The day's fatiguing enough without the wave, the constant wave.
It's a roller coaster.
The spikes.
So when we're having a look at the meal choices and why we've structured it in that way, it's for that very reason, that if you have the more substantial meal at that time, it just reduces the risk of any issues later on, and it also will tie you over for the day a little bit better. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all of it. Some clients are sitting there trying to I
don't want it anymore.
I don't want it anymore. But it does make life a little bit easier. The clients that have said, "Oh, I just had a wrap, and holy fuck, it made a world of difference to my day," even though I wasn't starving, like I wasn't really hungry. And I wasn't particularly full afterwards. Like it did make me feel a lot better as the day carried on. Because like, when is there ever a day that you just eat nothing but lollies and chips for like 7 hours?
Yeah, while warming up and then doing
Trying to
3, 6,
maximize
9
performance.
attempts.
Yeah.
Never.
So that's why if we can have some kind of routine structured meal, the breakfast is particularly important because it may be the only normal
Balanced
meal that
meal.
you have.
Yeah.
But that post squats meal is the next one. And then we can
The
kind
fun
of chill.
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go into bench and that's not really that fun.
Yeah.
But,
And convenience too. Like if you're all got meals you need to heat up and there's one microwave,
Yeah.
and you're stressing about getting this meal in.
Yeah.
yes.
And everyone's
Maybe
like,
just go for the wrap.
15 people fighting over a microwave.
Yeah.
That
would
So you
stress
think
me
about-
out.
Yeah,
I'd be like,
it's just little things like that.
"Sorry."
Yeah. Can I just sneak in?
Can I
just
Yeah.
scooch in?
But the other thing as well is that it's like, and this is where it's important for us as coaches is to know the structure of the day, and is something like a microwave even going to
Is
be
there a fridge?
available? Do they have the option to heat that meal up? And
Yeah.
if they don't, then is there something that they'd be comfortable eating cold? Like personally, eating rice and mince cold is not my cup of tea,
No.
but I could very happily eat mince and potato cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why, there's just something around those textures that I'd be quite happy to have potato cold, like mashed potato.
Yeah.
It's also a good little source of potassium in there, so drop some of that in.
Yeah.
The RUMs, potassium.
Yum.
And if you don't want to eat it all, then that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that another alternative that we can go for if a microwave isn't available and they want something a little bit heartier than just a wrap. So
Also, a reminder: bring cutlery.
yeah.
Just in case. Don't want to eat mince with your hands.
Hey, I've been there. Like,
Oh, really?
yeah, I've not had
She haven't
cutlery
got a
with
strong
me.
hand.
Shovel it.
Like, eats it like a dog out of a bowl. Just put your face in it.
All right. So hydration stuff post squats as well. Is there anything that you would recommend people be vigilant of?
I just say remembering to just drink, and I would also suggest to people having your Gatorade solution and having water as well, and kind of going between the two throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I think we touched on before, you were talking about maybe like your ratios of, like, obviously you don't want to have too much Gatorade to the point where you're like slamming down, and it might upset your tummy
Yes.
if it's very potent and strong.
Yeah.
A little hack watering down.
You'd
that's
say
great.
water it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where having that shaker, that extra shaker is really handy. One, if you're having pre-workout first thing in the morning, you've got your shaker to actually
Shake it up.
Shake it.
stir up.
Shake.
And then if you are doing the Gatorade watered down resolution, then it really depends on the individual. Sometimes you can go a 50-50 ratio, which I find that probably a little bit too watered down, and I would do like a 70-30. So do a large majority of Gatorade and then just top it up with a little bit of extra water in there just to break that. But I mean, again, it depends on whether or not they're used to drinking something like Gatorades or Maximus or whatever on their normal training days.
Yep.
And if they even want to have it. Like, some people feel like they just need to have Gatorade on comp day because it's just like, oh, this is just a sporting, this is a sporting drink, right? But like, there are other things that people can have. Like, the main benefit to something like that is just liquid calories, liquid carbs. So it's really easy, but you don't have to have those if you don't want to. You can do something like a juice or whatever if that's your preferred source of liquid calories. Like, I would probably just steer clear of like milky substances.
100%.
Like, don't do your chalky milks. Like, I know
Save it
chalky
for
milks,
after.
I know chalky milks are anabolic and shit, but like maybe
Especially if
post.
they're Rugby Farm.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She's obsessed with them because
Oh
they
my
don't
God.
have Rugby farms in Tasmania.
Oh, really? Have you been
Yeah.
raiding the fridge downstairs?
You may even buy a couple of
Travel bags full of rugby farms.
I'm like, all it is
Excess baggage, yeah, just milk.
just make sure it doesn't go off by the time she gets there.
Yes.
Cool. So hydration. Around this time as well, I guess you could look at some caffeine or sodium and stuff like that, but I generally save that to post bench.
Yeah.
If again, depends on the length of the day, the timing of the day. Post bench is where most people start to get that like lower back cramp up because they've been the exorcist on the bench.
Been a
and stuff.
pretzel for too long.
Yes, yeah. So, and the reality is, like, sodium in particular, you probably have already had that in that lunch meal, so it shouldn't be something that you need an excess amount of, because there are actually negative repercussions of having too much sodium and like acutely dosing it, which is why post bench, if we are going to look at introducing some sodium, I would usually try and get it dosed like in a pill form or
Tablet,
something
yeah.
like that, so I can monitor the actual amount that they've consumed.
Yep.
So yeah, post bench, what are your kind of go-tos there?
Post bench,
Yeah.
for me, this is where I would look at having no dose before deadlifts, because for me personally, I know I need to be like fucking like angry
Pinging.
and on. Yeah, deadlifts. Otherwise, if I'm not like
On the nose beers?
I'm not on the nose beers at comp, please. Not allowed. Nah. Like for me, I know it's not going to come off the ground if I'm
Yeah.
not like in that mind.
Yeah, but that's a whole like
Different
that's
thing.
a mental
That's a
thing.
different
That's
kettle
not a
of
physical
fish.
thing. Yeah.
Of what?
Different kettle of fish.
Oh,
So I'll have my caffeine and then pretzels. I'll have like salted pretzels, maybe a little bit of like lollies, not too much, because like it's so easy to just be like, oh, it's my comp day, I'm gonna go crazy on this party mix. So making sure I'm sensible.
Yeah.
But yeah, not completely having too much to eat, because usually the comps I would go to, they're not that long.
Yeah. Your comps are usually half day comps.
They're usually half day, so it's not like I need a lot of food after bench, but I just need that little kind of pick up. Like maybe it's like a process kind of thing too. It's like, oh, I'm going into this lift.
Have you serving sized your things, or do you just bring the whole bag of lollies?
I just bring the whole bag, so I don't really feel the need for me, because I'm not gonna get carried away.
Yeah. I have seen some people like serving size
Little
there.
like plastic bags with like their I don't know.
This has 50 grams of
Yeah,
carbs in it.
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you kind of
It's
like
1 gram per kilo of body weight.
Yeah. I don't know. In my opinion, you're kind of like overcomplicating it a little bit.
Yeah, and
like,
it takes the fun out of the day if
Yeah.
you're literally just like
Meal prepping comp day.
Yeah. I would just say like meal prepping comp day is like, yeah, have your foods and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But don't be so particular on like, I need to make sure I have 50 grams of carbs at this time and then this. And like,
Yeah.
you're just really overcomplicating the whole
Yeah.
thing
And
when you're already
absolutely.
a pretty nervous wreck.
to
on
be
the
fair,
day.
the day probably won't run the way that you think it will. Something will happen, and then
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Anxiety plus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I get people pre-bagging them if they are someone that is guilty of only over consuming lollies and not showing restraint. So that may make sense for someone if they're like, oh look, if I have the choice of a wrap or a bag of Sour Patch Kids, I'm gonna go for the Sour Patch Kids
Fuck
the
the wrap
entire
off.
day.
Yeah.
So that's where like if you pre-portion it or like, you know, just serving size yourself,
Yeah.
then it's like, like
Yeah.
I might save those for a little bit later in the day.
True.
Yeah.
That's the only time I would see logic in
Yeah.
pre-bagging
That's a good point.
Yeah.
some sorts of things.
Yeah.
But Kirby, for yourself, like, or your clients, like, what do you generally recommend?
Well, I'm not a big lolly fiend, so I don't generally. That's not my go-to. So I'm pretty fortunate in the not over-consuming part. But something like a rice cake or pretzels or something like that, just to get a bit of a salty hit. Quick, easy to sit. I know it sits well, and I don't feel like a bag of dicks after.
Yeah. I think one thing that we should probably note on if people are doing like chips and that sort of stuff is to try, or like biscuits or crackers or some kind of sodium thing, is try and go for the oven baked option rather than like the high fat option, because that's just never going to feel really nice.
No, I personally feel lethargic after having too many fats as well.
Yes. Yeah, of
Just
course
like,
you do.
you're just
It
like,
slows
it's
things
digesting
down.
it.
Yeah. So if you are looking for, you know, some biscuits or salty options, then just go the oven baked or
not fried.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so post bench lollies, I mean, that timeline again, it depends on how fast the day is going and that sort of thing, but stocking up on a few lollies like after bench or the sodium based snacks post bench. It just makes you feel that little bit more like pep in your step come
Yeah.
deadlifts,
Yeah.
rather than like trying to take them as you're warming up for deadlifts. Like you kind of want to like walk into deadlift warm-ups feeling
good.
feeling
Feeling
good,
good.
rather than trying to remedy something
Yeah.
because you didn't get it in soon enough.
Yeah.
And again, this all depends on how quick it's moving from post bench to warm up for deadlifts. If it's like an hour or so, then have it as soon as you get off. And the other thing that we haven't talked about here is like taking yourself out of the space
Yeah.
to have those meals and to have those snacks and
Yeah.
just kind of decompress a little bit. But the other thing here we've got is like your second caffeine hit for the day. So if we're going to do it, we want to, again, have that around 30 to 60 minutes before we start performing deadlifts. I would try and like have it so that you like, again, it depends on how quick the comp's going and how long it takes for you to warm up for your deadlifts, whether or not you dose up on your caffeine as you start warming up for deadlifts, so that when you hit the platform, you're kind of at that
Peak.
point. Or if you want to feel a little bit more confident, like maybe you haven't quite had the best day and like throughout your warm-ups you kind of want to be feeling good, then have it a little bit sooner, so that when you're warming up you're like you're
Yeah,
ready
you're in
and
the
it's
zone.
game on and you're in the
Yeah.
zone. Because as we know, it's not like it rises and falls that quickly.
It's like,
So
yeah.
so you kind of have time for the caffeine to kind of peak, be in the system,
Yeah.
perform your deadlifts. Like it's not going to crash you down to a point for your third deadlift
No.
that you're like, oh, the caffeine has left my
It
system
fucked
and
me up.
yeah, now
Yeah.
I'm
Believe.
you know, I can't execute this third lift. Like
Yeah.
if you've timed all your meals appropriately, you've had a good amount of sugar and salts and things like that after your bench and your caffeine's there, like
You'll be fine.
come deadlifts you should be chilling.
Yeah.
And again, just make sure that you're having a fair bit of water and stuff, so that you're not completely flat, cramping, any of that sort of shit. I've
Yeah.
seen some pretty horrific like cramp ups and stuff
I
like that on
have too.
deadlifts.
Yeah. Just
Power spews and cramping. It's kind of what I see on.
I just remember this poor girl. She was like asking everyone for salt. One
yeah.
day she's like, "Do you have salt? Do you have salt?" And I was like, "I've got pretzels." She's like, "I need salt." I was just like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I was like, "Do you want some pretzels?"
That's salty enough. It depends on how bad. Like,
yeah, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
it looks look bad." Yeah.
usually I'll walk around with like most comps I'll have like sodium tablets and caffeine
Hand 'em
tablets.
out.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
you get a pill, you get a pill, you get a pill.
You look crampy. Have one.
Yeah. So and like the sodium, I believe they're 500 milligram ones as well. So you got to be. That's the beauty with it, is that you can acutely dose that and know what you've had in, but you do have to be considerate of how much sodium they've had beforehand,
Previously.
because it could really set off your guts if you just like dosed up on 500 milligrams in one
Yeah.
hit. Cool. So anything else comp day food fluids that you think people should be mindful of?
Well, the only other thing I would say is like understanding the method of maybe caffeine. So if
Yeah.
you are having no dose, understand, I guess, the timing of when they peak. But if you're having Monster as your
Yeah.
sole kind of caffeine hit, that's 500 mils of fluid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you really gonna want to down 500. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
thinking about all these things, which you should be thinking about and testing, like
Yes.
in the lead up.
Yeah. It's not like have your monster at the start of the day and then a monster again come deadlifts. Because the other thing is like that fizziness.
Gurgling
Yeah.
the tummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not just the caffeine from the monster; it's all the other ingredients that are in it.
Having
So that's
a party in there.
Yeah. So that's why, like with pre-workouts, I usually say, like, if you want to have a pre-workout,
Yeah.
have it at the start of the day.
Yeah.
And then acutely dose the caffeine that you're looking for at the end of the day, not all the other shit that comes in those
With it.
concoctions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
that's definitely a good point.
That's the only other
Yeah.
thing that I can think of.
That's very
Solid. All right. So
Very.
other things that we just want to be considerate of on comp day is, as we've mentioned, take yourself out of the space to eat. There's nothing worse than like if you've already got that nervous tummy and you don't necessarily have an appetite, to then be in the base and the yelling and the plates banging.
People knocking you.
Yeah, like all that sort of stuff. Just like take yourself out of that environment.
Yeah.
Rest and digest, right?
Mm.
So like take yourself out of that environment, have your meals, have a drink, just get away from the buzz and just kind of like chill for a second, allow the adrenaline to kind of like, because if you're just riding this fucking high all day, you're gonna feel like a bag of dicks has been the quote of the day, come deadlifts. So try your best to step out of that environment, step away from everyone. Like, don't even have a group of like 10 people follow you. Just like go be by yourself, eat your meal, just chill for a second.
Recharge.
Take the headphones out. Like, don't have music playing.
No angry music all day.
Less stimulation.
Reduce the stimulation. So the other thing we've got here is the differences in environments from certain levels of comps as well, and making sure that people are prepared to handle that. Because like our novice comp here, like it was a good day. Everyone was buzzing. Everyone's just having fun.
It's just like a big Nexus training session.
Yeah. A lot of people here knew each other.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go to like, I mean, when we were taking down some of these notes, you guys were like Pro Raw. That was like a comp that neither of you have ever experienced before, right?
Yeah, that was way different to any.
I was overwhelmed and I was just sitting in the barbecue chairs.
Just a different environment. Just a different environment to the comps that I've been to.
Yeah. So how would you compare that to, because obviously like you went to APL Worlds, and we've got APL Nationals coming up soon as well. So like how would you compare the differences between like this novice comp, those nationals or state level comps, Pro Raw, invitational, high level? Like how would you compare the differences in environment overall, like between each one?
Well, I mean, for one, some of the APL ones was in a hotel, which, different environment altogether. But like this Pro Raw was like in a gym. It was busy as hell. It was pretty like warm in there. You've got some big people. Like I've never seen people this big. Like that was intimidating for me. And I know if I was in there like trying to warm up, I'd be too scared to be like, excuse me, can I please like
there'd
get
be
on
a
this
difference
bench?
though. You wouldn't be warming up with the 160 kilo men.
That is an excellent point. Maybe one day.
I'd hope not.
I just feel like people are kind of there more so for them, which is fair. It's a high level elite. They're there to do the best they can. Whereas at maybe a local, you're kind of helping others. You might have someone that you take under your wing and you say, oh, you should start warming up now. Whereas like that wouldn't happen. You're kind of like, you're there, you're on your own. Like not on your own, but like
you'd be surprised the amount of people, like even when Will was in the warm-up room at Pro Raw, there was guys there that like are putting up elite totals, but are very novice competitors. And so they had no idea what they were doing in the warm-up
Oh, really?
room. And
fake it till you make it.
Like I said, elite level totals, but different mindsets to some of those high level people. Like when you look at, some of the names of the men that come to mind was like Joseph Whitaker and Anthony Krisner and some of those guys that have been competing for years. And so it's very easy for some of those guys to want to follow in their footsteps and replicate what they're doing, which is great. Like that's why comps like Pro Raw or whatever are pretty exciting. But even at nationals meets where, there's a lot of novice people there that have never really competed. They don't have coaches. They've prepped themselves into it. So they rock up and they're just like, what do I do? I don't know. So the
What's
amount
my
of
rack height?
So the amount of times that like as a coach just being in the warm-up room, and this is why I remember saying to both of you, like, if you can come out and just kind of like mix and mingle with a couple of people and just make sure that they know what they're doing and they're in the right places and that sort of stuff. I'm not expecting you to load bars or change rack heights or wrap knees or anything like that, but just give people the peace of mind and the reassurance of like, hey, just go sit over here and wait and you don't have to start until X amount of time. Like that's what I love doing on comp day. I just direct people what to do, where
I give
to be.
people my candy. I'm like, you want some lollies?
But yeah, so there is definitely a huge difference, and that's why coming back to this, competing is a skill.
Yeah.
And I think if anyone out there, the last point that I have here is for some of those people that are higher level, be considerate of others. Like you may be going to a Pro Raw level competition or a national level competition, but there are other people there that have national level totals but aren't national level lifters, right? It still may be their second or third competition, and so they're very, very new to that atmosphere, that experience, that environment. So be considerate of them. Share your fucking barbell and share your equipment. Work in with people. Make sure that when you're loading the next bar that you're talking to other people around you, going, hey, like, what have you got next? What do you need on there? And don't just think completely like about
yourself.
My
day. I've worked so hard to be here.
Because like everyone has worked hard to be there. Everyone deserves to have the same experience as you. And so if I can finish this off with just saying, like, be considerate of other people out there. If you can see someone is a little bit lost and a little bit confused, and you yourself are very comfortable and confident in what you have to be doing, then just check in on them and just ask them, hey, are you okay? Like, are you all good? Do you need anything? There is a difference though in like if someone's unloading and burdening you with their like, I failed my attempts, and they're like emotionally like
dumping on you.
There is a difference, in which case I respect if you're just like, no, I'm going to keep distance because I don't need
your
those
negativity
vibes
right now.
Yeah. But in that situation, just be like, hey man, like maybe just take yourself outside for 5 minutes, just chill,
Fuck
decompress.
off.
Just like go give yourself 5 minutes. Like, you'll be fine. You still got plenty more attempts or whatever. Like, give them that little bit of like it's okay. Like, keep going. But yeah, just be considerate of other people on the day, and don't be a fucking asshole.
Because you might make someone's day.
Exactly. And everyone was in that position once where they were completely used to it and would have appreciated all the help.
100%.
Exactly.
So. I think if there's anything like, Will has told me out of all of his comps, is that he doesn't judge a lifter based on who they are on comp day, because like a perfect example is like the battles that he and Sebastian Orup, or Australian strength coach, used to have. Like, Bass would be at the opposite end of the warm-up room with a posse of like 5 to 10 people all around him. They'd like, be kind of looking over and checking what Will's
What's he
doing,
warming up on?
like that sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that that's what he was like, but like there was no communication between Will and Sebastian on comp day. Like, not from Will's, he didn't give a fuck. He was warming up with one of the other guys that was the top competitor of the day as well. And they're cracking jokes and having a good time. But he would never judge Bass based on how he needed to mentally prepare himself for that day, because as soon as the lifting was done, they're shaking hands, they're talking shit, they're laughing, it's all good. So just be considerate that some people do need to go to a different place to be a competitor.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and like, don't judge people based on how they act on comp day, but just be considerate that if they are a little bit like that, then give them
the space
what they need, or try your best to work in with them and that sort of stuff. And don't just be like, oh, that person's only going to have that mono, and like, yeah. And if you are one of those people, then just be considerate that, like, don't be the asshole that hogs the mono or hogs the bench or something. So cool. All right. I feel like that's been a much longer episode that we've hit today.
Oops.
So
less nipple talk.
Yeah.
More education.
If you missed the nipple talk, go back one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for tuning in. If anyone has any questions on any of this, then you can head to the website, NexusPerformance.com.au/podcast. Drop your feedback in there. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye. Send some more fun facts.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.